if there's a possibility. And if you have to leave, I'll connect with you later. So Mark Twain once, he would have kind of funny quips, and he would talk about how an impromptu speech takes about 3 weeks to prepare. and sometimes it is appropriate to have a very polished, prepared, lovely speech. It sounds good to the ears. But one time my son told me, he listened to me. In fact, I want to thank my family. If my dear mother would wave. Mama. Mama. She's a former resident of Hoonah and now in Juneau. And then I've got family outside, lots of children, nieces and nephews. On my son there with the little boy on his shoulders. I don't know where his wife is, and one of the reasons why I absolutely must thank family, because I wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for them, right? Because they're going to go through this with me. Of course, we try to protect them. Oh, hi, Mommy. I've seen you before. But it can be a little rough on them, you know, so it's not just something you jump and say, yeah, let's do this. You have to think about it. And they said yes, and they gave their blessing. And so I'm very, very appreciative of that. And back to the Mark Twain thing and the impromptu, it was my son actually, I don't know, a year or two ago, and he says, Mom, I listened to you speak. And when you have something all prepared and half memorized, it just doesn't ring as true as when you speak from your heart. And so I'm speaking from my heart today. I don't have any prepared notes. I haven't memorized anything. Throughout the day, as I was taking care of many tasks, I would think of different things that I wanted to share with you. But I will tell you, I have had a lifetime, not just 3 weeks, to prepare for this impromptu speech.
Yes.
My lifetime's a little bit longer than some others, if you can catch my drift. But I was born in Ohio, and I was raised in a family that spoke about politics. In fact, my father briefly served in the Senate in Ohio just for a couple of years. He wanted to get back to his firm in Canton, Ohio, and so he didn't stay with it. But I grew up in a family where politics were discussed around the table, and I married a man who grew up in a family where politics were discussed around the table. And so we as a family have done that same thing. But I wanted to tell you, when I came up to Alaska and I met my husband in Hoonah and we got married, I just want to tell you a little bit about the background. And I own where I live. That'll probably come out because they dig everything out. I lived in a Christian community, a very conservative Christian community where ladies wore dresses and men had to were clean shaven. And I loved it. I still stay friends with some of the people that were there too. It was a growing period, and I wouldn't have the family I have today had I not been there. So I'm grateful for that time, and we can chat about that more. But I want to tell you, when we launched off and started our family, we were under the poverty level in the state. And it was very, very difficult, even to buy food with our little children. But Alaska gave us the opportunity where we could break out of that. Yes. Education gave us the opportunity. Yes. And one of the things that I am seeing now, and that I'm very concerned about in our state, is two things: a brain drain and a brawn drain. Mm-hmm. We need those people that can do the kind of jobs, the resource development kind of jobs, that don't take a master's degree. And we also need the educated for certain positions, and we're losing young people. And so one of the things that I have focused on a lot has been resource development and education, because they're very much paired. And one of the reasons I stepped up is because I have been continuing to offer solutions the entire time to improve our education system. And it hasn't been easy to get all those things through. But I was the one who had the bill. You've probably heard about the READS Act. And I worked across the aisle to get that through. I am not afraid to work with people across the political spectrum. And as I reflect back, most everything that I was successful, it involved that. But you can count on me. You can look way back at my little bullet points. When I said what I stood for, I have stuck true to those. Because I think the good Lord gave me the gift of being able to build consensus without forsaking my values and my principles. And so that is a skill set that is very, very important for a governor to have, because you're not always going to be given the legislature that you would maybe handpick yourself. So you have to play the cards you're dealt, right? And so I think that is an important skill set that I will bring as far as addressing the education and the workforce issue. And I want to just touch on something that some of you may or may not have heard. If you've heard me speak, you maybe have heard this one. Across the nation, 1 in 5 is on Medicaid, and this includes children, elderly, disabled, but it also includes working age, able-bodied adults. 1 in 5. In our state, it is more than 1 in 3. It's 37%. Folks, that is not sustainable. And part of my vision is to be able to provide to some of the young men and women that are currently on Medicaid the opportunity to get the training so that they can have some of these jobs, because we've got projects. We're on the verge of some very exciting projects. And I've already heard talk among industry that we're going to need to import people from out of state. Well, what happens when that happens? They come in, and then they take that paycheck out. So one of the things I would like to do is bring down that Medicaid population and provide training. And one of the reasons I think it's been an advantage for me to be in Juneau these years, because I've learned the issues inside and out, and I get to talk to a lot of people. Employers have come into my office numerous times in the last few years and sat down and said, I had a young man or I had a young woman that I wanted to promote. They had good work ethic. They were ready for the next step. I wanted to give them a raise and more responsibility. And they turned it down because they were going to lose their Medicaid or their family. Something is wrong with that system. And we need a step down. We need a way to move people off. There is a gap. There's a gap because it takes quite a large salary before you're in a position where you can afford your own health insurance or you're with a company. And so there's some work to be done on that. But that is my vision, because it's going to do two things at once. It's going to boost our economy and therefore our livelihood and our pursuit of happiness, right? But it's also going to address our budget situation. And that's what I want to mention to you next. One of the reasons why I'm stepping up is because we need someone who is willing to lead through a time of what I'm calling a rough patch. It is going to be a rough patch right now. And as an example, 10 or so years ago, the revenue we collected as a state, traditional taxes from oil and gas, was about $6.1 billion. It's only about $2.3 billion now. So there's about a $4 billion delta. You cannot tax business, you cannot tax industry, you cannot tax families, and especially when you only have 740,000 people to make up that. So we do have to look at our budget and be very strategic and prioritize. And I am willing to take the heat, and it will take heat, because when you do that, you're going to have people on all sides not happy with you. But you got to have someone with a vision that will hold the line, because when these projects come on, it's going to be a good thing. And the last thing we need is to put someone in office who will institute an income tax and tax businesses and drive more people away. And the research does show when you do that, people pack up and leave. We don't want people to leave. And here's the project. You've probably heard a little bit about the gas line. We've heard about that for decades, but folks, it is real and it's closer to us than it ever has been. I attended the energy conference. I spoke with some of the foreign investors. These are from allied nations, and they're serious about it. And as I told the Palmer Chamber the other day, I'll let you in a little secret that was not mentioned on the stage at that conference. And that was that they are also interested in helping us finish the Susitna-Watana Dam. Do you realize what that would mean for Mat-Su? Do you realize what that would mean for the state? With the gas line, that's going to lower energy costs. But if we also were able to get that dam done, that would really, really help us. And you would see a boom in Alaska. The sun is going to rise in Alaska. And I'm going to help that sun rise if we thread the needle right, we hold the line with these different things. I want to mention two other things. I said I didn't have a prepared speech, but I knew I wanted to talk about energy and education. And then there are two things that start with the letter A I wanted to talk to you about, because I have been fortunate to be the lead and the champion in the legislature on 2 matters, and one of them is agriculture.
Yes.
We picked this setting today because of that.
Yes.
You know, Abraham Lincoln was the one who established the Department of Agriculture at the federal level. A lot of people don't know that. And in my study and work, and here's where it's odd, I was in the minority, but I was asked to chair the task force on agriculture, and I had 36 members, and there were only 4 of us who were legislators, so we had a lot of private sector people, farmers, ranchers, people knowledgeable about nutrition and crops and all that kind of thing. And in that process, I really, and, you know, it was coming out of COVID, and we realized, you know, what happens if the Port of Seattle shuts down? We're in real trouble, and of course we think about that with bridges and earthquakes. But part of my studying was that Scandinavia, which is at the same latitude as Alaska, they export $10 billion in agricultural products. We import $3 billion in food. So we're upside down, and there is potential. And it's not an easy task. We have a big state with little transportation infrastructure, so there are a lot of pieces that need to come into play. And I want to just introduce to you the Division of Agriculture Director, Brian Scoresby. Honored to have him here. But I am a huge champion of establishing a Department of Ag, because we all need food. You know, it is for life, but it actually makes a lot of economic sense, and it's a matter of responsibility too. Food security is important. And here's another real benefit. You know, about 72 hours after something's harvested, the nutritional value is just drops dramatically. So if more we can grow here in the state, the healthier we are going to be. That will also help with that Medicaid budget. So that's the first day I wanted to talk to you. And by the way, when I say start, I'm a limited government gal. So when I say start a Department of Ag, I don't want something that's hovering and trying to restrict our farmers and ranchers. They're there to be support, to help coordinating the market, to help shepherd all the parts and pieces that need to be done, and particularly to be at the governor's cabinet table. And that's why I champion it. Yes. The second A word or abbreviation I want to tell you that I've been privileged to learn about is artificial intelligence. You know, like I said, I'm not a spring chicken, but for some reason, on the Senate side, and up until a couple of years ago, the entire legislature, I was kind of the emerging technology person, just because it fascinated me, and you know, I love creativity and innovation, and I wanted to kind of open the door to that kind of thing. We have an unmanned aircraft industry in the state because of work, where one person had a bill to ban drones, and I had a bill to welcome them, because I realized that it's just a tool. And as long as we don't have bad actors doing the wrong thing, you know, I don't want to penalize a tool. There's nothing inherently evil in the tool, right? You just have to have guidance and parameters as far as the actors and the users. And it's the same thing with artificial intelligence. I've been on a national task force for the last 3.5 years, I think it is. I've learned a lot, and you know, I have concerns just like many of you do. There's also a lot of potential, especially for streamlining government. We might be able to get by with a few less employees and save some money, so that's a good thing. But I'm also watching carefully. I know I have a lot of people who are big fans of education. I've been a champion for education. We have the president of our school board, Kathy McCullum, here. Thank you for coming, Kathy. We're so blessed. We're so blessed with a good school board out here. But one of the things that I've been watching and I've brought to the national stage, I've been privileged to be on panels across the country, is the use of chatbots as tutors for children. Initially, it seems like it's fine, but if you're a homeschool parent or a teacher that's using the school, we need to watch it very closely. If you recall or you've heard, we're seeing increases in mental health and suicide, and it's being pinned back on the tremendous amount of time they're spending on social media and screens. And when all these platforms and everything came out, there was no study on the impact to developing mind and young people, and now we're suffering those consequences. So I have been just making a rally cry at the national level that this is happening so quickly, but we cannot only study the educational impact of this tool, we have to look at the psychological impact. There's already a young man in New York who began to be so attached to his chatbot that he cut out all the other humans in his life, and he ended up committing suicide, and the chatbot was kind of in the conversation with him, kind of okaying that. So we do have to be careful. So on the one hand, these tools are exciting and there's great opportunity, but we have to make sure we harness them for good and that they're not harmful. So I just want to mention those. So that all the things I just talked about, I'm definitely not a one subject person, as you can tell. There's so many things I'm interested in. Sometimes my staff in my Senate office has to rein me in because I'm wanting to get involved in so many things. But I do want you to know that whatever your interest is, I probably would be incredibly delighted to hear about it. I would be, because I don't know, that's another perhaps gift that I have, is I want to hear from you. I think you cannot have a functioning representative democracy if the people don't give input to the elected officials. So that has been a guiding light for me. And because that's how it works. And so that would not change if I were governor. It makes it a little more difficult, and I'll be listening to people all across the state. And as I close up, I just want to say, there are people in here that are not Republicans, and I think that is fabulous that we have perspectives. Because in order to win this seat, we're going to need votes across the board. We're going to need votes from across the state, and I'm really pleased because I lived in Hoonah, I lived in Bethel, I lived above the Arctic Circle in Fort Yukon, I lived almost 6 months in Fairbanks, I lived down on the Kenai for a couple of years, and now I've been here in Palmer since 1990. So I have been all over the state, and I think that gives me a great foundation, too, for understanding the needs. I understand why you need a somewhat of a functioning ferry system, for instance, in Southeast. We do have to address the cost, but it is their highway. In our villages, there are great needs. We need opportunities for economy there, and with the broadband opportunities, there will be more and more. So I have a heart to see these things across the state so we can thrive, and that we know that this state will be a good place for a very, very long time. But we're going to need a leader, a governor, who will thread the needle, be able to resist the pushback, stay focused on the journey ahead, and make sure that we're opening doors to opportunities for our young people. So with that, thank you for coming, and my staff is coming out.
Except I'm not going to. First of all is money. In order to do all of this, in order to make sure that she is in, it is a White House in Juneau, or around the state, getting her to the people that she needs to get to, it does take money. We have such a gift. Andrew Satterfield has agreed to be our treasurer, so give it up for Andrew. On the front desk, if you want to contribute, there's a basket. Please fill out the envelope. There will be a QR code coming so that you can, those of us that love Antidote, that is coming, so you can be sure to do that. We definitely need all that we can have. We also need, more importantly than money, we need prayer. So I'm going to ask Senator Hughes as pastor and Senator Hughes to go outside, and ask all of you all to go outside so we can get a photo of him praying over her, because that is the most important thing that we're going to do.
And I just want to say, if I make a mistake, I tell you. I made a mistake today because somebody asked if this was a fundraiser, and I said no. I didn't know that she was going to do that. I knew that there would be envelopes in case somebody asked, but I didn't really know that. So whoever, if you're in this room, I made a mistake. So.
She didn't know. That is absolutely true. I just sprung on her. And be prepared, that's going to happen more often. So if everyone can make their way outside, and we're going to have a moment of prayer with all the beautifulness that's surrounding us. Oh, and make sure to eat some food when you come back in.
It's right there, but the problem is that thing.